Welcome you all. In this video, we are going to see about the scope of portfolio management, benefits of portfolio management and approaches in construction of portfolio management. Let us see first the scope of portfolio management. The scope is monitoring the performance of portfolio by incorporating the latest market conditions, identification of the investor's objective, constraints and preferences, making an evaluation of portfolio income, making revision in the portfolio, and implementation of the strategies in tune with the investment objectives. Next, we are going to see about the benefits of portfolio management. The following are the benefits of portfolio management. That is, increased decision making transparency through a more consistent evaluation of all business units and options, a consistent approach to risk measurement. Third benefit is a systematic way of including different views of risk in decision making process, a clear enhancement to the due diligence process, better understanding of value creation among new investment opportunities, consideration of the correlation and diversification effects of the organization's different businesses and investment options, guidance for strategic planning, that is, identification of where the company needs to move to improve its risk return position, and consideration of qualitative and non-financial implications. These benefits can easily be recognized across most organizations regardless of size or industry. Next, we are going to see about the approaches in construction of portfolio management. Commonly, there are two approaches in the construction of portfolio management: wise traditional approach and the Markowitz efficient frontier approach. In the traditional approach, investors' needs in terms of income and capital appreciation are evaluated and appropriate securities are selected to meet the needs of the investors. In the modern approach, the portfolios are constructed to maximize the expected return for a given level of risk. It views portfolio construction in terms of the expected return and the risk associated with the obtaining the expected return. Let us see the traditional approach. The traditional approach basically deals with two major decisions. They are determining the objectives of the portfolio, selection of securities to be included in the portfolio. Normally, this is carried out in 4 to 6 steps. Before formulating the objectives, the constraints of the investor should be analyzed. Within the given framework of constraints, objectives are formulated. Then, based on the objectives, securities are selected. After that, the risk and return of the securities should be studied. The investor has to assess the major risk categories that he or she is trying to minimize. Compromise on risk and non-risk factors has to be carried out. Finally, relative portfolio weights are assigned to securities like bonds, stocks and debentures, and then diversification is carried out. Analysis of constraints. The constraints normally discussed are income needs, liquidity, time horizon, safety, tax considerations, and the temperament. First constraint is, that is, income needs. The income needs depend upon the need for income in constant rupees and current rupees. The need for income in current rupees arises from The investors need to meet all or part of the living expenses. At the same time, inflation may erode the purchasing power. The investor may like to offset the effect of the inflation and so needs income in constant rupees. The next constraint is need for current income. The investor should establish the income which the portfolio should generate. The current income need depends upon the entire current financial plan of the investor. The expenditure required to maintain a certain level of standard of living and all the other income generating sources should be determined. Once this information is arrived at, it is possible to decide how much income must be provided for the portfolio of securities. The next constraint is need for constant income. Inflation reduces the purchasing power of the money. Hence, the investor estimates the impact of inflation on his estimated stream of income and tries to build a portfolio which could offset the effect of inflation. Funds should be invested in such securities where income from them might increase at a rate that would offset the effect of inflation. The inflation or purchasing power must be recognized, but this does not pose a serious constraint on portfolio if growth stocks are selected. Next one is liquidity. The liquidity need of the investment is highly individualistic of the investor. If the investor prefers to have high liquidity, then funds should be invested in high quality short-term debt maturity issues such as money market funds, commercial papers and shares that are widely traded. Keeping the funds in shares that are poorly traded or stocks in closely held business and real estate lack liquidity. The investor should plan his cash drain and the need for net cash inflows during the investment period. Next one is safety of the principal. Another serious constraint to be considered by the investor is the safety of the principal value at the time of liquidation. Investing in bonds and debentures is safer than investing in the stocks. Even among the stocks, the money should be invested in regularly traded companies of long standing. Investing money in the unregistered finance companies may not provide adequate safety. The next constraint is time horizon. Time horizon is the investment planning period of individuals. This varies from individual to individual. Individuals' risk and return preferences are often described in terms of his life cycle. The stages of the life cycle determine the nature of investment. The first stage is the earlier career situation. At the career starting point, assets are lesser than their liabilities. More goods are purchased on credit. His house might have been built with the help of housing loan scheme. His major assets may be the house he owns. His priority towards the investment may be in the form of savings for liquidity purposes. He takes life insurance for protecting him from unforeseen events like death and accidents, and then he thinks of the investments. The investor is young at this stage and has a long horizon of life expectancy with possibilities of growth in income. He can invest in high risk and growth oriented investments. The other stage of the time horizon is the mid-career individual. At this stage, his assets are larger than his liabilities. Potential pension benefits are available to him. By this time, he establishes his investment program. The time horizon before him is not as long as the earlier stage and he wants to protect his capital investment. He may wish to reduce the overall risk exposure of the portfolio, but he may continue to invest in high risk and high return securities. The final stage is the late career or retirement stage. Here, the time horizon of the investment is very much limited. He needs stable income, and once he retires, the size of income he needs from investment also increases. In this stage, most of his loans are repaid by him and his assets far exceed the liabilities. His pension and life insurance programs are completed by him. He shifts his investment to low return and low risk category investments because safety of the principal is given priority. Mostly, he likes to have lower risk with a high interest or dividend paying component to be included in his portfolio. Thus, the time horizon puts restrictions on the investment decisions. The next constraint is tax consideration. Investors in the income tax paying group consider the tax concessions they could get from their investments. For all practical purpose, they would like to reduce the taxes. For income tax purpose, interest and dividends are taxed under the head income from other sources. The capital appreciation is taxed under the head capital gains only when the investor sells the securities and realizes the gain. The tax is levied then at a concessional rate depending on the period for which the asset has been held being sold. From the tax point of view, the form in which the income is received, that is interest, dividend, short-term capital gains and long-term capital gains are important. If the investor cannot avoid taxes, he can delay the taxes. Investing in government bonds and NSE can avoid taxation. This constraint makes the investor to include the items which will reduce the tax. The next constraint is temperament. The temperament of the investor himself poses a constraint on framing his investment objectives. Some investors are risk lovers or takers. He would like to take up higher risk for lower return, while some investors are risk averse who may not be willing to undertake higher level of risk even for higher level of return. The risk neutral investors match the return and the risk. For example, if a stock is highly volatile in nature, then the stock may be selling in a range of rupees 100 to 200 and the returns may fluctuate between 0 to 100 in a year. The investors who are risk averse would find it disturbing and do not have the temperament to invest in this stock. So with this, I like you are able to understand the approaches in construction of portfolio management in traditional approach. By this next video, we are going to see about the approaches in construction of portfolio management by the modern approach. Thank you.